In a quiet town, there was a small neighborhood full of neat houses. People in this neighborhood liked their homes and enjoyed living there. Most of the houses looked clean and well kept. The streets were calm, and neighbors often greeted each other with a smile or a wave. Everyone wanted to live peacefully and be good neighbors. One of the people living in this neighborhood was a man named Robert. Robert was a kind and quiet person. He worked hard every day and loved his house. He had lived there for several years, took care of his garden, and made sure his home looked nice. Robert liked the calm of the neighborhood and the friendly people around him. He was happy with his life. But in this neighborhood, there was a group called the Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. The HOA made some rules to keep the neighborhood clean and safe. They wanted all houses to look nice and for people to follow certain rules about their yards and property. Some people liked the HOA rules, and some thought the rules were too strict, but everyone had to follow them if they wanted to live there. There was a woman in the neighborhood named Karen. Many people called her Karen not just because it was her name, but because she acted very strict and bossy. Karen was a member of the HOA. She took the rules very seriously and often told other people what to do. Some neighbors found her too demanding, but she was also respected because she knew the rules well. One morning, Robert was working in his garden. He was planting some flowers near the edge of his yard. Suddenly, Karen came to his door. She looked upset. She said, "Robert, you are on my property. You are trespassing. You must stop coming near my house." Robert was surprised and confused. He looked at Karen and said, "I have always stayed inside my property. I did not mean to go on your land." Karen shook her head and said, "No, you are wrong. This is my property, and you have no right to be here. If you do it again, I will report you to the HOA and the city." Robert felt worried. He did not want trouble. He tried to explain, "Karen, I only work in my yard. I think I stay inside my property line. Maybe we should check." But Karen was angry. "Right," she said, "I don't want to talk more. You must leave now." Robert stepped back. He wanted to be a good neighbor. He closed the door slowly, still thinking about what Karen said. He had never thought about the exact lines between his land and Karen's. He thought everyone knew where their property ended. After that day, Karen began watching Robert's yard more closely. She sent letters to the HOA, complaining that Robert was on her property. Robert tried to ignore it at first. He thought it might be a mistake. But Karen kept complaining. She spoke to other neighbors and told them Robert was breaking the rules. Robert felt sad. He loved his quiet life. He did not want to fight with Karen or anyone else. He began to feel uncomfortable in his own home. Every time he worked in his garden or walked near the edge of his yard, he worried that Karen might accuse him again. One afternoon, Robert decided to talk to a few neighbors. He wanted to know if they had any problems with Karen. Some neighbors said she was strict, but fair. Others said she liked to control things too much. But no one had seen Robert go onto Karen's property. Robert realized he needed to find out the truth, he thought. Maybe I don't know exactly where my property line is. I should check so that I can be sure. The next day, Robert called a professional surveyor. A surveyor is a person who measures land and tells exactly where the boundaries are. Robert explained his problem. The surveyor agreed to come and check Robert's property carefully. When the surveyor came, he brought special tools to measure the land. He walked around Robert's yard, marking the edges with small flags and stakes. Robert watched quietly, hoping the results would be clear and fair. After some time, the surveyor finished his work. He told Robert it would take a few days to prepare the official report with all the measurements and lines. Robert thanked him and waited patiently. Meanwhile, rumors began to spread in the neighborhood. People talked about Karen and Robert's conflict. Some thought Robert was careless. Others wondered if Karen was too harsh. The peaceful neighborhood felt a little tense. Finally, the day came when Robert received the survey report. He opened the envelope carefully and looked at the map inside. At first, he could not believe what he saw. The lines on the map showed that Karen's house was not fully inside her property. Part of her house was built on Robert's land. Robert was shocked. He read the report again to be sure. It said clearly that the property line ran under part of Karen's house. This was not Robert's mistake. It was something that no one had known before. Robert thought about what this meant. He felt confused and a little angry. How could Karen accuse him of trespassing when her house was on his land? He wondered if Karen had ever checked the lines herself. Maybe she had assumed the land was hers without proof. Robert knew he had to be careful. He did not want to cause a big fight. He decided to gather the facts and then speak to Karen in a calm way. He wanted to explain the truth without being angry. That evening, Robert sat on his porch and looked at the quiet street. He thought about how easy it was for problems to start when people did not understand each other. A small mistake or assumption could cause big trouble between neighbors. He also thought about how important it was to know the truth. Property lines are not always easy to see. They need to be checked by experts. Sometimes people build things without realizing they are crossing lines. Robert hoped that Karen would listen to him. He wanted to solve the problem peacefully. He wished the neighborhood would return to the friendly place it was before. At the same time, Robert prepared himself for a difficult talk. He knew Karen might not like hearing the truth. She had been very sure of herself before. But Robert believed that honesty and respect could help them find a way. That night, Robert went to sleep thinking about the next steps. He was ready to face the problem, but hoped for kindness and understanding. After receiving the survey report, Robert felt a mix of emotions. He was surprised and a little upset. Karen have accused him of trespassing when her house was actually built partly on his land. He thought carefully about what to do. Next, Robert knew this situation could become difficult if not handled carefully. He wanted to make sure he did the right thing. Robert decided that the best way was to talk to Karen calmly. He wanted to show her the survey report and explain the facts. He believed that if she saw the truth, she might understand and the problem could be solved. Robert was hopeful, but also a little nervous because Karen had been very strict before. One afternoon, Robert went to Karen's house. He knocked on the door and waited. Karen opened it, looking surprised to see him. Robert smiled politely and said, "Hello, Karen. I wanted to talk about the property line between our houses. I have some information from a surveyor." And Karen frowned and said, "I don't know why you were here. I've already told you to stay away from my property." Robert stayed calm. "I understand you are upset, but the survey shows something important. It says part of your house is on my land. I wanted to share this with you so we can find a solution." Karen looked confused. She took the report and looked at the map inside. For a moment she was silent, then she said, "This can't be right. My house has been here for many years. I've never heard of this before." Robert nodded. "Yes, it is surprising. But the survey is official. We need to talk to the HOA and figure out what to do." Karen's expression changed. Worried and a little angry. "I don't want to move my house or change anything. This is my home." Robert understood her feelings. "I don't want to cause trouble either, but we have to respect property lines. Maybe the HOA can help us." Karen closed the door slowly. Robert felt disappointed but knew it was only the beginning of the problem. Over the next few days, Karen told other HOA members about the survey. She said the report was wrong and that she would not accept any changes. Some neighbors took her side, while others felt Robert had the right to protect his property. The HOA saw the situation was serious. They called a special meeting to discuss the problem. Robert and Karen were both invited. The meeting was held in the community center, where many neighbors gathered to listen and share their opinions. At the meeting, the HOA president started by explaining the facts. The survey shows that Karen's house is partially on Robert's land. This is a legal issue that affects both parties. Karen spoke first. She said, "I bought my house many years ago. I did not know about this problem until now. Want to move or lose any part of my home?" Robert then explained his side. "I respect Karen's home, but I cannot ignore that part of my land is under her house. I want to find a fair solution that respects both of us." The neighbors listened. Quietly, some were surprised by the situation. Few said, "We didn't know this could happen." Others were concerned about the effect on the neighborhood. The HOA members discussed options. They talked about legal steps, possible compensation, or changes to the property. Everyone agreed it was important to find a peaceful solution. HOA president said, "We will help both parties by recommending mediation. Mediation is a process where a neutral person helps people talk and find a solution. It is often better than going to court because it is less expensive and faster." Robert thought this was a good idea. Karen looked unsure but did not refuse. After the meeting, Robert went home thinking about what had happened. He felt the situation was getting more complicated but still hoped for a peaceful ending. He knew that the truth was on his side, but he wanted to be fair and respectful. Meanwhile, Karen talked to some neighbors privately. She said she felt stressed and did not want to lose her home. Some neighbors tried to comfort her, but others suggested she should listen to the survey report. The days passed, and the tension in the neighborhood remained. Some people avoided talking about the problem, while others whispered about it. Friendly feeling of the neighborhood was disturbed. Robert decided to prepare for mediation. He gathered all the documents, including the survey report and the letters from the HOA. He also wrote down his thoughts to explain clearly what he wanted. When the day of mediation arrived, Robert and Karen met with the mediator in a small office. The mediator was a calm and fair person whose job was to help them talk and listen. The mediator began by asking each person to explain their view. Karen said she had lived in the house for many years and loved it. She did not want to make changes. That could cost a lot of money. She was also worried about losing part of her home. Robert spoke next. He said he respected Karen, but could not ignore that part of his land was under her house. He wanted to find a fair way that did not hurt anyone. The mediator helped them find common ground, she said. Both of you want peace and respect. We can work on a solution that fits your needs. They talked about different options. One idea was that Karen could pay Robert some money for the part of land under her house. Another was that Karen could make small changes to her house to fit her property line. They also discussed ways to avoid this problem in the future. Karen listened carefully. She realized that fighting would not help, and that compromise was necessary. Robert showed kindness by offering to help find a fair agreement. After many hours, they agreed on a plan. Karen would pay Robert some money to settle the land issue. In return, Robert agreed not to ask Karen to make expensive changes. Inform the HOA about the agreement. The mediator helped them write the agreement in clear words. Robert and Karen signed the papers. They shook hands and said they would try to be better neighbors. After mediation, the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Robert felt relieved that the problem was solved without fighting. Karen also seemed less angry and more respectful. Robert continued to take care of his garden, and Karen focused on her home. They occasionally greeted each other politely when they met. The HOA learned from this problem and started reminding all homeowners about property lines. The story of Robert and Karen spread in the neighborhood. It became a lesson about the importance of knowing property boundaries and solving problems with respect. Robert hoped that others would learn from his experience. He believed that even when problems start, kindness and fairness could help make peace. After the mediation meeting, Robert thought the problem was finally over. But he soon realized that the situation was more complicated than he had hoped. Even though Karen had agreed to a plan, tensions between them and within the neighborhood did not disappear right away. Karen still felt uneasy. She had never imagined her house was built partly on Robert's land. She worried about what the neighbors thought of her and if this would cause more trouble in the future. Karen's pride made it hard for her to admit she had been wrong about the property line. She wanted to protect her home and her reputation. Robert noticed the change in Karen's behavior. She was less friendly and often avoided talking to him. At community events, she would not greet Robert like before. Robert understood her feelings but wished they could have a better relationship. Meanwhile, the HOA was watching the situation closely. They knew that conflicts like this could harm the neighborhood's peaceful atmosphere. The HOA called a special meeting to discuss how to handle the property line issue and to help both neighbors move forward. Many people from the neighborhood came to the meeting. Some were curious to hear the latest news, while others were worried about the possible effects on their own homes. The HOA president started the meeting by explaining the importance of respecting property lines and working together as a community, the president said. This is not just about one property or one house. It is about fairness and trust in our neighborhood. We want everyone to feel safe and respected. During the meeting, a few neighbors shared their thoughts. One woman said, "We should support both Robert and Karen. Mistakes happen, but we need to find a way to help them and prevent this from happening again." Another neighbor said, "Maybe the HOA should provide better information about property lines when people buy homes. That way, problems can be avoided." The discussion was thoughtful, but some voices expressed frustration. A man said Karen should have checked her property carefully before building. Out. It is unfair to Robert. The HOA president listened carefully and then said, "We must be fair to everyone. That is why we recommend clear rules and support for neighbors who have questions." After the meeting, the HOA decided to take action. They arranged for professional surveyors to visit other houses in the neighborhood. The goal was to make sure all property lines were clear and to prevent future conflicts. The HOA also planned to send letters to all homeowners. The letters would explain the importance of property boundaries and encourage people to ask for help if they had doubts. Robert felt good about these steps. He believed that clear communication and information could keep the neighborhood safe and friendly. As the days went by, Robert tried to reach out to Karen again. He wanted to make peace and improve their relationship. One afternoon, he knocked on her door and said, "Karen, I hope we can be good neighbors. I don't want any hard feelings." Karen looked surprised. She said, "I am still upset about the situation. It is hard to forget." Robert nodded. "I understand. But I believe we can move past this. Maybe we can work together to make the neighborhood better." Karen thought for a moment and then said, "Okay, I will try. I want peace too." From that day on, Robert and Karen slowly started to talk more. They found small things to share, like news about the neighborhood or events happening nearby. One day, Karen invited Robert to see a small garden she was planting. Robert was happy to visit and saw that Karen was making an effort to improve her yard. Their neighbors noticed the change too, and he said the two had become more friendly and respectful. Even though they were not close friends, Robert and Karen learned how to live together peacefully. They understood that living in a community means sometimes dealing with difficult problems, but also finding ways to respect and support each other. Robert also continued to care for his garden and house. He made sure to follow the HOA rules and stayed in touch with neighbors. Karen, on her part, became more open to listening and cooperating with others. She realized that being strict was not always the best way to solve problems. The neighborhood slowly returned to its peaceful and friendly atmosphere. People greeted each other, helped when needed, and followed the HOA guidelines with understanding. The property line issue became a story people remembered. It was a lesson about communication, respect, and the importance of knowing the facts. Before judging, Robert sometimes thought about how things might have been different if they had talked earlier, or if Karen had checked the property lines before. But he was glad they had found a way to resolve the problem without hurting each other. He hoped that his story would encourage others to be patient and kind when facing conflicts. He believed that honesty and respect could help solve many problems. As time passed, Robert and Karen both grew to appreciate their quiet neighborhood even more. They understood that a community works best when people care for each other and try to understand different views. The HOA also continued to improve. They organized meetings and activities to bring neighbors together and to share important information. Robert felt proud to be part of a neighborhood that learned from its challenges. He looked forward to many more peaceful days in his home. After the property line issue began to settle down, both Robert and Karen knew that they needed a way to keep peace between them. The neighborhood was a small community where people shared the same streets, parks, and sometimes even helped each other in daily life. But the tension between Robert and Karen had affected not only them, but also others nearby. They realized that to truly move forward, they needed to find a lasting solution that would work for everyone. The HOA had suggested mediation earlier, and that had helped a lot. But now, Karen and Robert wanted to do more than just fix the problem. They wanted to build respect and trust between them. Karen especially had learned that she needed to be open to changes and willing to listen. Robert, on his side, hoped to keep things friendly without making the issue worse. One day, Robert invited Karen to sit down and talk quietly. Said, Karen, I think we both want the same thing: peace and a good life in this neighborhood. Maybe we can find a way to work together and keep things calm. Karen nodded slowly. She replied, You're right. I want to fix this and not make more problems. I don't want to be known as someone who causes trouble. They began to discuss some ideas. Karen said, Maybe we can share information about our properties. That way we both know where the lines are and don't accidentally cross them. Robert agreed. That's a good idea. We can also ask the HOA to provide maps or guides for everyone. It would help if people had clear information. Two neighbors also talked about how they could be more friendly and helpful to each other. Karen suggested they share tools or help with small chores when needed. Robert liked that idea and said he was happy to lend a hand any time. As they talked, both felt more comfortable. It was the first time since the problem began that they were truly speaking as neighbors, not opponents. At the next HOA meeting, Robert and Karen shared their ideas with others. The HOA leaders liked the plan. They said it was important to encourage cooperation and kindness in the neighborhood. The HOA started working on new projects. One was to create clear maps of all property lines. They hired surveyors to make these maps accurate. Then, they gave copies to all homeowners. Now, everyone could see exactly where their property began and ended. The HOA also organized workshops to teach people about property laws and how to respect boundaries. These workshops were open to all neighbors. Many people attended and learned important facts. Robert and Karen helped by speaking at the workshops. They shared their experience and told others about the importance of checking property lines before making any changes to homes or yards. Their story became a lesson for everyone. The neighborhood slowly became closer. People started talking more and helping each other. Some neighbors even started small groups to clean parks or plant flowers. Robert and Karen found themselves in the same groups sometimes. They worked together on projects and began to appreciate each other's efforts. One day, Karen invited Robert to her house for coffee. She said, I want to thank you for being patient and fair. I have learned a lot from this situation. Robert smiled. I'm glad we could work things out. It shows that respect and kindness can solve problems. As time went on, Robert and Karen's relationship improved. They were not best friends, but they were neighbors who respected one another. They greeted each other warmly and sometimes shared small talks about the weather or neighborhood news. The property line issue also taught the HOA important lessons. They made new rules to check property lines carefully before anyone built or made big changes. This helped prevent future conflicts. The HOA also set up a way for neighbors to ask questions and get help quickly if problems started. This made the community stronger and more peaceful. Robert felt proud to be part of a neighborhood that learned from its difficulties. He often thought about how important it was to be calm and patient, even when things seemed hard. Karen also changed. She became more understanding and less strict. She saw that listening and cooperating were better ways to build trust than demanding or blaming. Their story became well known in the neighborhood. New people who moved in heard about it and learned to be careful and respectful. Robert hoped their experience would remind others to check facts before accusing and to find peaceful ways to solve problems. As seasons changed, the neighborhood remained a peaceful and friendly place. People smiled, waved, and helped one another. Robert and Karen continued to live next to each other in respect. Their small problem became a big lesson for the whole community. They both knew that living well in a neighborhood means more than just owning land. It means kindness, respect, and working together for a better life. After months of working through their differences, Robert and Karen found a new kind of peace. The conflict over the property line had been hard for both of them, but it also brought many lessons. They learned that misunderstandings could grow quickly if people did not communicate clearly. But with patience and respect, even the toughest problems could be solved. Robert often thought back to the beginning when Karen had accused him of trespassing. At first, he had felt hurt and confused. How could someone accuse him without knowing the truth? But now he understood that Karen had acted from worry and fear. She loved her home and was afraid of losing part of it. Robert realized that sometimes people act out when they feel scared. Karen also changed her thinking. She admitted to herself that she had been quick to blame Robert without checking facts. She saw how important it was to listen and learn before making decisions. She wanted to be a better neighbor and friend. The neighborhood had changed too. What started as a conflict became a chance for the community to grow stronger. The HOA took steps to make sure everyone knew their property lines. Clearly, they held meetings and shared information about how to respect each other's land. Neighbors began to trust each other more. Robert and Karen became examples of how people could overcome problems. They showed that even when things seem unfair, kindness and fairness can win. Their story was shared at community events, reminding others to be patient and honest. One day, Robert and Karen walked together in the neighborhood park. They talked about their journey and the changes they saw. Karen said, "I never thought we would come this far. I'm glad we found a way to work together." Robert smiled and said, "Me too." It shows that when we listen, we can understand each other better. As time passed, they continued to live side by side without worry. The land that once caused conflict now connected them as neighbors who cared. The experience also helped Robert think about how important it was to protect his home. Also to be open to understanding others. He knew that standing up for his rights did not mean being unkind. He wanted to keep that balance always. Karen felt the same. She learned to respect other people's space and feelings. She realized that being a good neighbor means more than following rules. It means caring for the people around you. The neighborhood became a better place because of their example. New families moved in and were welcomed warmly. The community spirit grew stronger. People helped each other in many ways. Robert often helped organize neighborhood cleanups and events. Karen joined too, bringing treats and sharing stories. Together, they helped make the neighborhood more than just a place to live, became a true community looking back. Robert and Karen knew that the property line problem had been a challenge, but also a blessing. It taught them lessons about respect, kindness, and cooperation that would last a lifetime. Their story showed that even when people disagree, it is possible to find common ground. With honesty, patience, and care, neighbors can turn problems into opportunities for friendship. Robert smiled as he looked at his garden. He felt proud of his home and the community around him. He was happy to live in a place where people learned to listen and help one another. Karen stood nearby, tending her flowers. She too felt grateful for the peace and respect they had built. She hoped their story would inspire others to choose kindness and understanding. In the end, the neighborhood was more peaceful, the neighbors more united. And Robert and Karen lived side by side as good neighbors and friends.